were running at half the power, and we had the same output. Hi, I'm Luke Searveld. Welcome to another episode of Meet the Gaffer. Today we've got a shootout. Two ARRI HMIs, an M40 and an M18. We're going to compare that with the LED cob light of Nanlux EVOKE 2400B. You could say BGM for green magenta, or you could just say B plus for plus minus green. I've got two gaffers with me. I've got Alan Steinheimer and Shane Lewis. And we're going to go through the cycle here of just taking readings, getting beam angle, all that stuff, and then we'll talk about what we saw, what we came up with. This is pretty rough and ready. There are some things that I already want to correct from the previous episode with the 2400B, but we'll get to that. All right, so we'll start with the M18 and see what we get.
So what we did here today is we put a 25 ultra bounce up, or more like a 17 by 20, but and then we marked off 20 feet from the ultra bounce, thinking that all of these lights, including the 2400B, are the ones that you might want to park a ways away from the set. In other words, coming through a window or illuminating a big area. So we're not going to do the 10-foot measurement today, just figuring that this is a light you're never going to put 10 feet from what you're trying to illuminate. In the middle there, we're going to measure the fall off where we get to half-foot candles. Put a little hand up here, left over from a Halloween shoot, to get an idea of shadow fall.
Okay, so we'll say 170.
It was 9.5 feet out is where we dropped a stop. So we went down to 80, maybe 85 feet.
Yeah, it's about 10 feet. Yeah. So yeah, let's just spot it. And so that's really our full width is 20 feet.
Yep.
So we're like 640.
I feel like I'm always a hair in on the flood side.
Yeah, it's like 4.5. Okay. So yeah.
And then do you want to see this at full spot?
Yeah, might as well.
Sure.
There's full spot minus that little bit to make it better.
Okay. There I'm getting 1100. You're going to get 550 right about here. So that's, yeah, it's like 6 feet. Yeah, let's go to, floodish.
So the one thing we see with the shadow fall from the M18 is, for years and years we loved the shadow fall from Fresnel's, and the whole M series is not quite there, but it's such a close approximation, I don't think anyone cares. So, right. I mean, I would use an M18 where I might have used a 2500 Fresnel or 4K Fresnel in previous years just because I could plug it into the wall. So, good enough. We, although nominally there's some multiple shadows in here, not enough to care about.
It's interesting because actually coming up, I've got a job where they're speccing a Fresnel, and it's for a long throw, and it's for, to see shadows of tables. And so, an M series M90 would probably do similar, like you were saying, to an 18K Fresnel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the M series basically draws half the power.
Yeah.
Or you need a light half the size to match the, equivalent kind of Fresnel. And in San Francisco, we're in a small market. I'm sure all across the country there's a lot of small markets where size matters. The jump from an M18 to a 4K is cam log power or generator or all sorts of things. So.
And then let me just get color just so we have it. 5100.
So, as we so often have experienced over the years, what's nominally a 5600K bulb is reading out with no diffusion or anything that would alter the color as 5100.
Yep.
One of the many problems of HMIs was you have 5 of them on the set, absolutely none of them are going to be exactly the same.
And now we can dial it in much better rather than having to put gel and in the hotter, bigger light. You're going to have, you're going to have to swap out your gel more often. It has a nice fuller spectrum, but yeah. And it's also saying, plus 3 magenta, so it's not perfect.
Yeah.
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 Okay, that's the M18, and let's move on to the M40. That's the other thing, we're waiting for it to come up. So 100 amp baits, and then you're splitting it to two 60 amp paddles, but it's all just 110.
Yeah, and then the M18, and we're gonna run the Nanlux out of this little breakout for the 60 amp, and then the M40 needs to go directly into the 60 amp splitter.
38.2 amps.
So that's the 4K up completely.
This is full flood, full flood.
Full flood, okay.
So there's still a little donut action.
Right.
I can spot in just a hair to get rid of that.
Yeah, it seems like there's a little bit of a darkness, shadowy thing.
A little more bulb imperfection with the.
So let's go around here to see where that is. Okay, so 550, then we want to have 2 1/4 for our outside.
225, yeah. Oh, it's actually, it went up there, huh?
It did, yeah. So
Got that dead spot, man.
yeah. So here I'm 640.
Do you want to should I just check focus here?
Yeah. So maybe if you spot it in a bit. Okay. 2700.
Okay, that seems roughly centered on your stand there.
Okay.
Flood back out. Full flood. Here's a little bit spotted in.
Okay, 640, 670. It goes.
650.
Yeah. Let's say 650.
Okay, so we want to find where it goes.
Okay.
325.
All right. So that's 8. So that's about 16.
Definitely a fair amount of unevenness.
Yeah.
And the donut problem is bigger with the M40 than the M18.
So this at its widest is 640. And then if you just zero in on it or go maybe half, so that's 1400 foot candles. And then if you keep it there, okay, and then we're going to 700. There's 700. So that's like 5 foot, so that's a 10-foot diameter beam, okay. Okay, full spot. And we've got 3,600. 18, it's about 3.5 feet, so 7 feet.
Let me go almost to that, just off of full flood.
Here's that kind of spot. Or flood.
Drastically different than the M18.
And then as you walk away, it'll wrap, and you'll become, yeah. And now you're alien.
That is sort of creepy there. Even your skinny neck.
Yeah. That's cool. All right, and then just for color's sake, just under 5,600.
Okay.
And 00 on green magenta, so,
Pretty clean.
yeah.
Pretty new bulb.
And yeah, newish bulb. And
Yeah.
we should say, this is a 3-phase system here. You might get a different reading with a single-phase system in a house. Because the voltage is actually lower there. So
Overall, this is a 3-phase system, not single-phase.
that's right.
Yeah.
Which most industrial buildings are 3-phase.
So voltage-wise, 38, 39.
Yeah.
So now let's go to our 2400. 20.43, okay. Just under 21. All right, so here I've got 700. And this is at 5,600?
Yes.
Okay, and then so 350 is about here, which is like 8 feet, so that's like 16. So that's similar. So 700 there, and we only have the 45 degree on this, so that's wild.
Yeah.
And this is at full max, 100% 5,600.
Yes. At unmax.
And so running just a little bit over 20 amps, and we've got same as the M40, full flood. So other intensifiers are coming, but that's huge. We're running at half the power and we had the same output. That kind of blows me away.
Yeah. You want to see what it looks like at 3200? Because there's the
Yep.
color tunability factor of this.
Details.
Because then you also have to take into consideration if you wanted this light to be warm and it's an M40, now you're adding gel and you're losing light for that.
Yep.
So it's 21.2 amps.
21.2, so it's actually boosting it a little bit.
Yeah.
And I've got 600 foot candles here. So then it should have the same fall off to 300. Yep, so that's like 16. We lost 100 foot candles. So then the thing that I learned today, that when I was saying constant mode and max mode, that was incorrect. So I thought that at constant mode, it capped it at 15 amps, but it obviously doesn't. So when you're in tungsten, it boosts it. And the idea of constant mode is so that you have same output overall between warm and cool, rather than capping the amperage.
For me, it wouldn't be a common occurrence, but if you were dimming, cross-fading from, cool to warm,
Yep.
then that would be a factor.
If you had a Q, it'd be nice to know that it'd be similar in output going warm to cool. Then when you're in max mode, we just saw it boosted a little bit on the tungsten side, but it is 100 foot candles different, so it's a substantial difference, but you're getting maximum output.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's backwards, right? Like we're drawing more, but we have less output
Right.
at tungsten than at daylight.
Yeah. Yeah.
So are you always calling these intensifiers? Because I find on set, nobody knows what to call the cones
Yeah.
that go on the cob lights.
It's interesting because a lot of people just call them reflectors, which I think, yeah, it's similar, but we have all the cine reflect stuff, so it's like that's another reflector, and reflectors are usually, things that you're bouncing stuff, so this is bouncing. But yeah, I call it an intensifier because then you have different intensities given the different intensifiers.
Yeah, I guess, and then if you can assign a degree to it, that would be helpful.
Right, and this is 45.
Yeah.
And these are completely different size, but comparable to the 1200B, which some of us are used to. So, yeah. Now, it would be kind of fun to put the other intensifiers on from the other unit just to see, but it's not going to do what we want it to. Oh, so let's talk first about Shadow. So it seems very comparable to the 4K.
Actually, even more wraparound, I think, than the 4K.
Softer.
Yeah.
It actually is way, like look at my shadow compared to
Yep.
what we had earlier. It's much cleaner.
And then walk away again.
I still become an alien.
Yeah.
But that is a lot. There is some weird like stray, look at the weird like, you can almost see where the edge of the outside parts of the reflector.
Mm-hmm.
See how it's like enlarging the shadow? That's
Yeah.
a little weird if you're farther away. But once you get into a range where I think it matters, it's actually pretty clean.
Yep. That's wild. Okay, let's look at color. Okay, here I'm getting 5700 and 0.1 green. So, and it doesn't have as full of a spectrum. It's pretty spiky blue. But yeah, it's 5775. So let's just, for yucks to this meter, let's dial it into 56. There you go. You got it right there.
And did you need some green magenta?
No, it's not. It's 0.1. I mean, that's nothing.
This is 5500 on the light, comes out as 5600.
On the meter. Okay. So let's go to 3200. Yeah, and this is 3187, so it's basically 32. And I am finding that now, for some reason, tungsten seems to be spot on better with manufacturers than 56. And this is no green magenta, so that's like perfect.
So let's talk about real life. The $1 million question I had leading up to today is it's a 2400. We here in the United States, unfortunately, have 20 amp circuits in some 15, but let's figure most film people are going to be able to figure out where the 20 amp circuits are. How can I run this on a 20 amp circuit? Well,
Okay, so what I've learned is that I believe when you buy this unit, you get two power leads. You get one that doesn't have an end on it, so you can put your own end on it. The other will come with a smart switch, and the smart switch will have either 15 amp or 20 amp, and those will actually govern whether you're drawing 15 amps or 20 amps, unlike what I was saying with the constant and max mode. So that will actually be a governor, and because it's a smart switch, it will show on your screen how many watts you're burning, which is
Watts or amps?
watts. So for us, we are sort of like wanting amps, but for rank and file, you know, owner operator, watts is probably what they'll relate to more easily. So anyway.
Yeah, when we were testing and fooling around with this earlier, we were trying to find, let's say I'm confident in my circuit that it's 20 amps, and that I'm willing to run the risk of popping a breaker by running the light at 19 amps. So we did that. What we found was at 95%, it's drawing 19.0 amps.
At max, 95%
Max at
daylight.
95, daylight.
Yeah.
It did draw more when you were tungsten, and in theory, say if you went down to 5,000, it might draw a little more. But I mean, what that might mean for me in actual practice is I'm just going to put that thing at max. I'm going to dial it back to 95, and I'm going to find a circuit like a garbage disposal or the circuit next to the washing machine. Something I know is almost certainly going to be a dedicated outlet with nothing else on it, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to draw on that all day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, the one thing we always have to deal with in the United States is the actual male Edison plug is only rated for 15 amps.
Right.
So we had that same problem with the M18. They would just melt down. I figured every 6 to 12 months I was replacing a plug on an M18 because it drew 18 amps, and again that plug was rated for 15.
Yeah.
Just a couple loose frayed wires, and there's enough heat in there to melt it down.
So in a perfect world, if you are tied in to a Jenny, or you have power that has 240 or 208 or whatever, if you can run it in 220 mode, then you're not taxing that connector as much. Because, you know,
That's right.
when we could, we did M18s that way because they just ran more smoothly in a sense and didn't get as hot.
Yeah.
So you can do that with this because obviously these products are made for a global market, and the rest of the world is laughing at us because they can do it on 220 all the time. But it's nice to know that you can get M40 output on a 20 amp circuit. That's crazy.
And you know, the other thing, on a bigger shoot, I'm more, as a gaffer, more likely to be on the Scout. And then a lot of times at that point, I was always looking to see if they had an electric dryer. It's just becoming more and more common versus gas. And unfortunately, of course, there's two outlets that are sort of standardized in the United States. But I basically had both dryer plugs to 60 amp, wired up 220, because virtually every dryer is 220. And that's how I'd run the M18s. And in the future, let's say if I was doing two 2400s, I would probably be interested in that dryer plug again and coming out into multiple Edisons.
Give us your rundown reactions, Shane.
To be able to have this much output on what you could potentially find at a house without having to run a generator or larger power is really promising. I'm interested to see what the other reflectors look like and a new Fresnel, because with the 1200 I use it pretty much exclusively with the Fresnel on it.
Exactly.
I think it's just a nicer quality of light, and the output is really good, and being able to spot flood on the fly is really easy. I'm not a huge fan of having to swap out the multifaceted reflector dish guys and having this case of kind of fragile feeling, you know, aluminum or whatever they're made out of. So be interesting to see what the rest of the attachments look like to round out the system. But purely from an output standpoint and a working, like a real life working standpoint, the ballast is really quite small compared to a lot, or what I would expect.
What we thought it would be.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not that much larger than the 1200 one. It's smaller than an M40 ballast. The head on its own is smaller than an M40 head, maybe weight-wise, pretty comparable. And then to be able to, I almost always, if I'm having a big push out a window, I'm warming it slightly to just have a little bit more of that feel. So to be able to do that, you know, and dial it in, and I'm always running blackout on my iPad, so to be able to control those things remotely and while I'm looking at a monitor with the DP is great. Plus the green magenta shift, for me, that's really great if you're putting it outside a window and the windows have
Tinted.
like a green tint to them.
Yep.
I find that a lot, and so to be able to compensate for that by maybe pushing a little more magenta, or if you have this fixture inside and you're trying to match sun that's coming through that, you could push it green and then correct the camera. So having those little adjustments, I think, will help, you know, really refine the use of this over an HMI.
You know what? Let's look at that.
You wanna look
So
at that?
so we have to turn it off in the menu because it has that sensor on it. So we'll turn off the sensor.
Wait, watch.
Oh yeah.
It's correcting the color
Yeah. It's a little magenta.
because it knows that
Sure.
the reflector dish is
Oh, wow.
adding
Yeah.
green.
Wow. Wow.
Oh, that's very.
That's cool.
Okay.
Okay, so let's turn it off.
So we get,
You want
And
it
then-
off or just?
Yeah, off, and then turn it on.
Okay, so.
So now we're full up, and what are we at?
You want me to build that Chimera?
Sure. So now here I'm at 170. Let me make sure that that's the center still. So what's nice is it's 170 for a long, long time. Or no, that's not true. So 85 is beyond, it's like 13 and a half feet. So that's like 28. And 170 is about what I think we were getting with the 1200. Remember, this is just a few guys doing some rough tests in a warehouse. There will be other tests. Do your own, see what's out there, compare and contrast. It's awesome to have this kind of stuff available. And now that we can actually put that into a regular 20 amp circuit,
yeah.
that's huge.
I mean, you know, Shane's the younger generation coming up. Everything's going to be on an iPad. Literally now, as these bigger lights come into play, and especially when the light's outside the window or something like that, having it on an iPad, just freaking awesome.
Yeah, and you know, we loved the daylight 1200s when they came out, but it didn't take very long. As soon as there was a bicolor version, you know, that took precedence. So for many people, for owner operators who are setting their daylight anyway, it matters less. For us who need to keep a DP happy, you got to have some color option, and being able to warm these up just a tad is huge. All right, hey, that's it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next time.
So one thing I've noticed a lot when I started using the 1200B and also some of the panel stands like the Nanlux 1200 dyno is the panel stands and the minivators from Matthews are great in between stands. We don't have to use crankovators and roadrunners and the like. You know, maybe a quarter the cost of some of those bigger stands, a lot easier to carry around, a lot easier to put in and off of a truck. And the panel stand, I guess, was designed a little bit more for an interior work, you could say. The Minivator has a little bit wider footprint, a little more stable, the collar's up higher. So when I'm going outside, a lot of times I'll you know, spec or bring Minivators with me. And when I'm inside, because it's got a wider footprint, it's also harder to get through doorways. So when I'm inside, I love the panel stand for the fact that I can actually squeeze through a doorway.
And you can often get those legs underneath like a desk or something like that.
Through there.
It's nice for that. I like these when I'm doing some kind of overhead or a menace or something. I just feel more stable with it. Yeah. Whereas there, you have to bag it and yeah. So I have two of those and two of these, and that's like they're always working.
And
Yeah.
this also has a Rocky Mountain leg, the minivator, so that's helpful on many occasions outside.
Totally.
Yeah, I actually like, I know we could test on this, I actually like the panel stand more for backlight, like Menace Arms, because you can get the stand a lot closer without seeing the base.
Exactly.
You see the legs, you know, much sooner, and so you actually don't have to arm it out as far if you're using the
Yep.
panel stand as a low profile footprint.
I could go into it. I've had some issues, but now that I have the proper hardware on it,
Right.
it's awesome.
Yeah, I think I've fixed 2 of yours on jobs where bolts are just loose and have fallen out.
Yeah. So,
Also, it does require a certain amount of experience, because basically, I mean, they have just enough resistance that you really want to tighten the 2 knobs down.
right.
But then what I find is if someone's a little on the green side as the electrician or grip, and they start cranking it down without loosening those 2 knobs, and then they wonder why nothing's happening, and then they loosen the knob, it will just drop dramatically.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's painful.
So loosening, tightening those things every time you're going up and down,
Yep.
pretty good idea.
Yep.
Practice to do.